It's your favorite nurse, Stephanie, and welcome to Planned Senior Moments. This is the podcast that helps you learn how to keep your parents safe, avoid unnecessary hospitalizations, and support them in aging in place with dignity and confidence. Most of my clients come to me during a time of crisis. Mom's in the hospital, things have changed drastically, and suddenly you're scrambling to come up with a plan of care. But it doesn't have to be that way. With each episode, I'll share real-life stories, expert advice, and practical tips so that you can be proactive, not reactive when it comes to senior care. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to all of our guests who've tuned in to today's episode of Planned Senior Moments. Let me tell you about our guest today. After living through a 14-year dementia journey with her parents, my guest today decided others needed a path forward on their dementia journey, so she wrote the Dementia Guidebook, It's Not That Simple, helping families navigate the Alzheimer's journey. Welcome, dementia care expert Pam Ostrowski.
So much, Stephanie. I appreciate that. And one of the things that I'd like to kick off our conversation with is a story about a client of mine who basically contacted me and said, I feel like a freight train has hit me. I never saw this coming with my mom. And I said, tell me more. How did this happen? And she said, my mom was down south in I believe it was North Carolina. And she was in her 80s, her mid 80s, very active, social, did lots of things, which is pretty amazing. 85 years old and getting around, still driving. And she said, I started getting phone calls from her friends, and they were saying she doesn't seem herself anymore, and she's not coming to events, or she's not doing the things with us that she used to do. So my client went down to visit and discovered an entirely different person than what she had seen in past years. And I said, so let's talk a bit about your interactions. How often did you go visit your mom? Oh, 3 or 4 times a year, right around the holidays or birthdays, big events. The first thing to note when you do that is that you're getting a snapshot of that person. You're not getting what they're like normally in a day-to-day scenario. And a person with early signs of dementia or mild cognitive impairment will actually be able to deflect questions, resort to a dozen phrases of, oh, don't worry about me, I'm fine. And so she didn't even know to look for those signs. And they can also rise to the occasion. So basically what that means is that you go down for a birthday party or a holiday, and they're dressed up and they look normal, they're acting normal, they're high energy, and basically they're exhausted when you leave because they had to put on this face, this artificial capabilities for that short period of time you were there. So the thing to keep in mind is that probe a little further, ask questions, make sure that you understand.
And Pam, some of the things that you're talking about, a lot of the clients that I work with, their families see the same thing. They're calling, they're checking on them. Everything sounds fine. Mom's answering the phone. She says, yes, everything is great. Good to hear from you. So of course, as the child, you assume everything's okay.
Exactly. So being able to, when I said probe a little bit more, you really want to observe. So for instance, look in the refrigerator. See how old the food is, not just that there's milk in the fridge or vegetables in the fridge, but are they spoiled? Are they being used? Is there a lot of processed foods around for convenience? Are there lots of cookies or sugar? Number one thing everyone with dementia loves is sugar. And so this gives you an opportunity to delve a little deeper. And if, for instance, Mom, why didn't you make our favorite dessert? Oh, I didn't feel like it this year. That's one of those deflective phrases. I didn't feel like it, or I just didn't, I thought we had enough already. So they didn't actually admit to the reason why, and you're taking them at face value, as you always have. And as we get older, so let's share a few statistics here. By 2029, 1 in 5 people will be 65 or older. 1 out of 9 people, this is as of 2022, 1 out of 9 people over 65 have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. That's not even just dementia, that's Alzheimer's, which is about 70% of the dementias out there. So if you think about the number of people who are over 65, and you think about the baby boomers being 78 this year, you start to do the math, and we're going to see more mild cognitive impairment and early signs of dementia if we're paying attention, because we're all very busy, right? I would imagine you're crazy busy because you've got a family. So it's sometimes hard to pay attention, really pay attention to an aging parent.
Absolutely. And a lot of our adult children are caught in that sandwich generation, right?
Absolutely.
They've got children that are in school or college. They have these full lives, just taking care of themselves, their jobs, and their children. Sometimes you just don't see your parents as much as you used to.
Not at
And if you're
all.
talking to them on the phone and everything sounds okay, there's no bells and whistles alerting you to anything different. But oftentimes when they do have that family gathering or a trip, they start picking up on things that are unusual to them. Maybe I need to look a little further into that. So when the adult children do realize that, you're a certified senior advisor, Pam. How has that education and training helped you with helping others caring for a person with dementia, such as the client you just shared the story?
Yeah. So the nice thing about, or the reason why I got a certified senior advising or advisor certification is that it gives me a broader scope on aging. So that means I know a little bit about, or I know what needs to be in place for paperwork. So durable power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, potentially, depending on the state you live in, a psychiatric advanced directives. And these are the conversations that we as adult children, having gone through it with my mom and my dad, these are the conversations that can be delicate because a parent or a child, either one, does not want to go there with that conversation, because you are talking about aging, the person changing or evolving, and all of the things that go with that. But you're not going to avoid it. Let's not talk about it and it won't happen. Wishful thinking, and I wish that were the case, because we'd be doing so much better at this. But unfortunately, without the conversation, first of all, others will make decisions for you. So if you don't have a healthcare power of attorney in place, the hospital will make the decision. And it usually goes to the spouse. The spouse is already in shock, right? So if you have both parents living and the spouse has been ignoring it, another clue is if the spouse does most of the talking. So my dad talked for my mom all the time. And I said, I didn't ask you the question, Dad. I asked Mom the question. So let's see what Mom thinks about this. And inevitably, I would hear the deflected phrases and that type of thing. So I'd be able to track how she was progressing once he would stop talking. So watch for that behavior where they fill in for the other one, because they're a team and they feel very protective of each other. So as a certified senior advisor, I kind of tune into that, but we also are trained on demographics and cohorts and things like what are the assisted living resources out there? Not for me to do placement, but to connect you with the right resources. In-home care, the first thing people want to do is bring in a caregiver. How do I do that? How do I know that this person's qualified? How do I find one? That's what a certified senior advisor can help you with. And many people who do help you locate a community or a caregiver are certified senior advisors. So definitely ask about that certification.
You know, I can't help but reflect on many stories, but one in particular, Pam, that you just made me think of instantly. A husband and wife, and he was covering for her, protecting her, and the children didn't necessarily pick up on that, but the trained professionals did, and it was very obvious. And in those situations, you can't help but have a little bit of sadness in that moment, because you see the struggles that, you know, she's going through, and then him, the loving husband, desperately trying to protect her from being discovered, so to speak.
It's heartbreaking, but the flip side of it is that you also have to know what words to use and how to communicate very differently than you ever have before. I will tell you personally, Stephanie, that I have regrets on the tone, the words I used with my dad, because he was brokenhearted. And you can't just go in there and say, look, you need to do this and you need to do that. And we should, and this is what we're going to do, and take over. There's no such thing as parenting a parent. They're the parent, you're the adult child. Don't forget that, because you will be reminded rudely, potentially, because they get upset with you. It's like, don't tell me what to do. And all you're doing is driving a wedge in the relationship when you're really trying to help. So come from that position of, hey, you know what? I was thinking about, I know it's early, but you never know when things will happen. Pad it so that it doesn't sound dramatic or traumatic, and be able to say, I was thinking about, I need to make sure all my paperwork is in place. Do you guys have a estate attorney? And they may say yes or no. Well, do you have a durable power of attorney in place and a medical power of attorney in place? And ask those kind of questions, because you can always say, hey, I just read an article and ARP, or I listened to a podcast and I heard about this. And I thought, and you actually have recordings from podcasts with estate attorneys. So definitely go listen to those, because those estate attorneys are just like gold when it comes to these conversations. And they can help you also have them too. And so it really is about, it's a team, it's an ecosystem is my favorite term, to gently escort your loved one, your parent, into being prepared. I always say, if you're going on a cruise, first thing you're gonna do is count the lifeboats, because without a lifeboat, your life isn't saved. And you have to think of us resources as lifeboats. We're the people who are exposed to this on a daily basis. We're here to help. This is our passion. We can help you on this, and you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to be afraid of how to have the conversation. And if you have an angry parent who's gotten upset with you, we can help fix that. So that's the beauty of what we do, is we've been through it. We've been through it with a lot of other people. And that's why it's so important to reach out to professionals who have been trained in these conversations.
Absolutely. And you made me think of other stories with other families.
We could probably talk for a long time.
Yes, we could. There's some frustration on the adult children's part, because after I come in or you come in and we're working with our clients, we get the appropriate response and they say to me, we've told them this for years. And I have to tell them, sometimes you just have to be the children and allow the medical professionals to come in and have those conversations. I don't know why it is. It's probably just the dynamic. But yes, sometimes we go in and repeat things that they've been saying for years, but it's just different. So it's frustrating for the adult children. However, they're happy when they finally get to the desired outcome, where mom and dad are safe, we have things in place, and everybody sleeps better at night, right? When mom and dad are getting the care that they need.
Yeah.
So how do you work with your clients who care for a person with dementia?
So I get people contacting me at different stages. The first time is potentially like my client story earlier, where she didn't know what to do. She's okay, I moved mom. Now what? What's going to happen? She's very much a planner. And so she said, now what do we do? And I said, we wait and make sure that she's stimulated and socialized. And then she had problems with her mom wouldn't leave the room. And so we had to go work through different strategies and try different things to get her mom to leave her room, to go socialize and eat dinner and that type of thing. And sometimes you just have to accept they are where they are. And actually, most of the time you probably do. And so I work with them at that point. I get a lot of people calling, and I think you do too, crisis mode. Either mom had a fall, walked down the street without shoes, got lost 3 blocks away, is stuck in a park. That's what happened with my dad with vascular dementia. Because she had the 14-year Alzheimer's journey. Dad had vascular dementia the last 2 years of his life. And he was in a Safeway parking lot. And the community they were in said, we can't find him. We sent out the sheriff's posse. And so I'm driving over there and, oh my God, what happened? And you don't want to be in that position, people. Believe me, you do not want your heart in your throat, scared to death that somebody might have hurt them, taken the car, beat him over the head with a tire iron. Who knows? Flat tire, gotten hit by a car. All these scenarios go through your mind.
Or hit somebody else with their car.
Or worse. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so there's all of that going on. And then I can step in and say, okay, let's take a look at this calmly. Is this good news? No, absolutely not. But we can work through it, and we can work through ways to prevent it. Here's who you talk with. I can't tell you how many people don't talk with a care community's executive director. It's like they're in charge of the entire facility. They're the people who are there to support you. So you then make sure that your loved one gets the care that they need. If that community hadn't been keeping track of my dad when he would come and go, we would never have known. He was safe. He just fell asleep in the car because vascular dementia doesn't have as much oxygen to the brain, so he sleeps a lot. And so that, and even at the very end, I have a couple of people whose loved ones have passed, and they're like, I thought I was grieving before, but now I just don't know what to do. And I call that identity theft of a caregiver, not because your social security number and credit cards have been compromised, but because you were a caregiver for so long that you don't know who you are when that person passes. And that's a topic that we could cover in maybe another podcast session.
That's very interesting, Pam. And we definitely should dig in a little bit deeper on that. Even as a nurse, when I was in hospice, it was really challenging because they felt like they lost their loved one twice. Over the years, as the dementia or Alzheimer's worsened, they forgot who they were, didn't remember their names, just didn't even recognize them when they came to visit. And then they lost them again at time of death.
The physicality is what I say, that you can't touch their hand or stroke their hair or do those kinds of things. But one thing I do want to say to people, though, is that it is not a common symptom for your loved one to forget who you are long term. So even if mid and late stages, if you see that person frequently, the likelihood of them remembering you is very high. So making sure that they're well nourished, hydrated, because those things affect the brain, and visiting, you don't have to visit for a long time, even 15, 20 minutes. They're going to say that you didn't visit, by the way. So get over that. That's when you call Pam and say, oh, don't know. Just take a deep breath here, because why is that important? You're the one who's putting the time and the effort in, so you don't feel valued. Let's talk about you for a moment, because a lot of times the angst, the grief, the overwhelm, the frustration is because the person doesn't feel seen or heard by the person with dementia. And that's the shift that happens when you are a loved one with someone with dementia. You have to look at them as who they're evolving into, and you have to look at why you're so frustrated and upset and feeling all of those emotions. Because for me, my mom and I were best friends. So to not get that validation, to not have her recognize her favorite things that I used to give her and do for her killed me. It just, you would come home and cry. And maybe that's something else we should talk about, is not being seen anymore by that person with dementia. But she still knew who I was, but the things that made us were gone. And they have to recover from that. You have to come up with new things and live in the moment, God forbid, opposed to in the past or the future.
Or accept the current relationship for what it is. There are so many things to really discuss and educate our listeners on, because it's just not that simple. It's very situational. Everybody's
great name for a book.
Right. And with your experience, you've probably seen it all. So before we leave today, and yes, you're going to be back on many times, so we're going to have lots of opportunities to hear you speak and really get into
thank you
circumstances really that people can relate to as well. But can we leave the audience with a tip? And I'm going to ask you for one specifically. One of the most challenging things that my families deal with is taking the keys away. Do you something that you can share with them when it's time to take the keys to the car away? Just one tip or two.
One tip is you're not taking the keys away. So that's the problem. We take the keys. The key, what is the key? It is a symbol of independence. It is a symbol of freedom. And if you take that away, you're saying you don't have any of those things anymore. So take the car away. That's what I did with my dad. He had a leather key ring, and he would hold on to that. And it was in his pocket all the time, next to his wallet, and it wore holes into his pants. He wore it all the time. And so I said, Dad, after this incident at Safeway, I said, I think it's time for me to take the car. And I said, I know you're more comfortable in it when to go into doctor's appointments and stuff. So I will come over and get you. And if you need anything, you just let me know. And I said, plus the community has a van. They take people around and everything. So you could do that. And what I told him was I was afraid, because if you put it in terms of their safety, again, you're parenting your parent, which is not a thing. So you have to be able to say, I was scared. You scared me. And what if? And I gave some scenarios of what could have happened to him. And I said, I can't focus on my work. I can't focus on my family if you're out there with that car. So let me take the car, keep the keys. And that to me is why people have it backwards.
Very interesting, Pam. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to your episodes, because this is such a challenge for families on so many levels. And everybody is facing a different challenge. It's not one and the same.
Unique.
Yes,
it's unique to every person.
So again, if you could let the audience know how they can connect with you, how they can find your book.
Yep. So you can search for on Amazon or whatever your favorite online outlet is for It's Not That Simple. And you should be able to keep it to just that, but you might need to put in helping, or Alzheimer's. But the full title is It's Not That Simple, Helping Families Navigate the Alzheimer's Journey. And then to reach me, you can go to my website, which is alzheimersfamilyconsulting.com, or just send me an email at pam@itsnotthatsimple.com, all spelled out.
And Pam, you can help families all over.
I am global. Yes.
That's what I thought. Fabulous. Thank you so much, Pam. I look forward to our next episode. This was so helpful.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I hope that all of your listeners reach out to us, even just to have a free conversation. This isn't going to cost you anything, to be able to start getting those questions answered, because ultimately that's what we all need, is answers.
Yes. Again, thank you, Pam.
Thanks, Stephanie. Take care. Have a good rest of your day.